Welcome to the Burgundy Gold Knuckleheads podcast. And as always, sitting right over there, it's my main man, Reggie. What's up, Reg?
Hey Ken, what's going on, man? How you doing?
I'm doing well. Man. We got a little bit of a special show today, don't we?
We do, man. I've been waiting all day. Excited about this. We love to bring people on to kind of get different perspectives with us. And today, folks, we have a special guest. You may not know her, but you certainly have heard her. And so she's someone special to us, and we want to be able to bring her on and introduce you guys to Miss Candi Waller, aka Seawall Sports and Entertainment. Hey, Candi.
Hey, you guys, how you doing? Thanks for having me.
Oh, fantastic. Thanks
Absolutely.
for joining us. And Reg, I don't know if you talked about Candi being a Commander's beat reporter. And so, we've brought in ex-players and people from different avenues, and we thought, Candi would be a perfect person to bring in and have another perspective for the fans that, don't hear another person's perspective. We hear them talk about that, but we're going to ask her some other questions besides just directly about free agency that's going on right now. And just like I said, trying to open up our worlds of everything that's burgundy and gold. So Candi, thank you for joining us.
Yeah, this is going to be great. I'm excited.
Yeah. So if for those that are remote like Ken and I, we all tend to tune in to a lot of the press conferences, post-game conferences and things of that nature, and you hear the reporters asking all the questions, and you will every now and then you'll hear Candi Waller from Seawall Sports, and then there's a question coming in, and so here she is, and she's joining us. And again, Candi, thank you very much for joining us.
This is cool. Sometimes it's nice to get a breakaway and talk about it after you think about it and work on it. And for us at Bowie TV, we have to always create shows about it. So it's good to talk to you guys.
Well, thank you. Thank you for joining.
And we won't say how much jealousy we have that you're able to be in the room and be in the spot and up close and personal with the players and coaches, man. That is awesome. And congratulations to you as well for having such a nice gig.
Oh, yeah. Oh, thank you. It's it's hard. It's a grind, but hey, it's a blessing. So let me be clear about that. So it's been good. It's been good. Thank you so much for acknowledging me.
Well, take a few minutes, if you will, and just kind of tell people a little bit about it. I have some notes here, as you can look, that kind of runs down your resume, and it's long. We did a little research on you, and it's long, so I'll let you share what you want to share with the people about you, because, man, you got some serious credentials there.
And also for those that want to follow you on Twitter or whatever, you go ahead and let them know right up front here, and I turn it over to you, Candi.
Yep, go ahead and follow me. What is it? Twitter, X, go to @Seawall SE. That's where you can find me there on that space. Instagram, it's CEO Seawall. Of course, Bowie TV Sports. And of course, the Bowie TV YouTube. So Bowie TV at BCMC TV Maryland is where all of our Commanders content are. That's where everything is. Some things from the past passes on Seawall Sports, but in the last couple seasons, it's all Bowie TV. So a little bit about me. I am a native from Prince George's County, Maryland. So I grew up a fan of all things DC sports. So, where I live, where my family still lives, is right down the street from, I guess they're going to call it Commander's Field. Now, a bit ways away from Ashburn. But I might be dating myself here, but my favorite TV show as a child was George Michael's Sports Machine. My parents used to let me stay up late to watch George Michael's Sports Machine.
Right.
And I just always admired the way he could tell a story about all sports, right? That made you feel like you were there.
Right.
He would kick it off, and then they click and move on to the video, and it's his voice in the background telling you everything that happened. And I just loved that show. And so I started a DMV Sports Weekly show. And I was on a number of channels in the local area, and eventually got to Bowie TV, and I ended up doing a Washington Commanders only show as well, because of course the Commanders content is so vast. it was enough to have its own, enough to, make the case
Right.
like its own show. But, before all of that, I'm a Hampton University graduate, HBCU pride, went to GW, Columbia University as well. My background is in consulting, strategic communications, all of that. But always deep down on the inside, I always wanted to talk sports. That's all I wanted to do was talk sports all day. And now I do. I've been making a joke that I don't know what my voice sounds like because my real voice, I left it at Super Bowl week. And so I've been struggling to get it back. I don't know. And so I actually met a vocal hygienist over the weekend. I was
Wow.
maybe I'll get my true voice back at some point or not. But I just love it. I love talking about it. I love engaging with folks like yourselves to talk about it because now it's a little different being on the other side, if you will.
Yeah,
I've been doing this, just celebrated 7 years in the industry. So hopefully many more to come.
And you've been covering the Commanders for 7 years.
Yep.
Yeah. So,
sports are primarily the Commanders for sure.
Yeah. So this is your, if you want to call it, third regime for Washington. You would have been under Jay Gruden time, Ron Rivera, and now the Dan Quinn, Adam Peters. So with that, clearly there's been a lot of changes, right? Because under Jay Gruden's time frame, the management was much more involved, and so as a reporter covering the team, how have things changed for you? Right, we see the names change of the players and the coaches, but from a working relationship with the organization, how have things changed, along the way, and where are you now, of what you feel comfortable talking about? I don't want to throw people under the bus, but what you feel comfortable talking about.
No, I mean, that's a great question. I mean, you definitely see the difference in just, I'll say, relationship between team and media. It's kind of been the same, if that makes sense. But just the overall handling of football business has for sure shifted. I mean, when I first started, it was kind of like, should I be able to go here? Should I be able to do this? It was a little, I don't want to say unhinged, like there were no rules. I mean, there were always rules from a media perspective, but it wasn't, it would be a little unorganized at times, a little chaotic, like, is this appropriate? Kind of, like, is this in a working environment? You saw that shift with the next coaching regime, right? A bit more professional. Definitely saw a shift in the locker room. I will say, like, I've really seen the field product, the players, you can tell what the culture is based on how they are.
Okay.
Right. So it would be a little at first, even between some of the players were great. Others, again, it kind of mirrors the leadership.
Right.
With Coach Rivera and staff, super kind, super nice. Guys, same way. Locker room, same way. I really, truly felt under Coach Rivera that the locker room was truly like a brotherhood. I felt like people genuinely liked each other in that space, but the winning piece wasn't there. They were still missing that winning, true leadership on the field culture. But I thought the brotherhood thing had been answered, if that makes sense. So
that's the culture change that we heard a lot about, right?
Right. It for sure was the culture change, and it worked. It just didn't translate to the field product. So now I will say I'm anxious to see what happens. Right. I have ideas based on now being around a little bit, meeting the new coaches. I have some thoughts on what I think this is going to be, but I'm also hesitant because I can be honest with you all and say I couldn't have been more wrong about how last year turned out. I think we all were, right? To a
Absolutely.
degree. I'm still shocked by just how bad it was, considering the locker room aspect was definitely the environment that you wanted to be in. There was no fighting, everybody got along, it was great. I will tell anybody, and I've said this before, probably one of the saddest days was when Montez and Chase got traded. That was
Really?
a sad day. It was very sad locker room. Those two guys were like the life of the party. They were the life of the locker room. They engaged with everybody. And so it was, everybody felt that. And that was just a key to me. Like, this is what I'm saying. These guys really genuinely like each other and care about each other. And they feel some type of way that this has happened, whether they're just going to miss them, of course, or it's just an indicator of how the season is going, or the season was over, or whatever the case may have been. But I'm anxious to see. I can tell you, and I've made this joke, and I've said this on a couple of other shows, for certain, I have not worked this hard in free agency before. I'm like, what? It was one day last week. I don't think I might have posted it on my Facebook, but I was like, I love my phone, and I don't even want somebody just come and take it out of my hand. Just take it and just do something with it, because it was like, it was crazy.
Yeah.
And
it's funny.
I definitely haven't worked this hard in free agency.
Well, it's funny you say that, because as we talked about before we came on here, that Ken and I live here in Dallas. And so you can imagine majority of our coworkers are all Cowboy fans. And so what you had was, and like most people, right? We have apps on our phone, we get the notifications, social media and things. And so every time you turn around, Washington is just signing someone different, right? And at the same time, nothing is happening with the Cowboys. And of course, we're taking some of their players, we've taken some of their coaches and things. And so you was getting a lot of the hate. It was all in good fun, but we got a lot of, eye rolling, and, here we are taking their players, and, oh, who you sign now? And every time the phone went off. But as a fan who wasn't having to work that beat like you had to do, I loved it, because every time it went off, I was like, who we got now? Right. Because we all knew that they were going to sign a lot of players, whether it was our own or someone else. Right. But we had a lot of holes to fill because of all the free agents that we had. But what was shocking about it is we didn't sign a lot of our own and stuff. So we'll get into all that and stuff. But it was a lot of work for you, but it was a lot of fun for me. I loved it.
Yeah, I mean, a couple times I may have posted, I think on multiple platforms, like, Commanders fans, y'all having fun? Like, y'all having a good time?
Yes.
Like, I don't know how I feel. I'm down bad over here, Commanders fans, but I'm happy that you all are happy. This is a very good thing.
Yeah. It was. I loved it. I enjoyed it a lot. I ain't gonna even lie.
Yeah. The way the Commanders have organized themselves and put themselves into place as where they sit today, is for a change. It seems very organized, right? Josh and team, the ownership and the consultants that they brought in, went out and got the GM, and then, the GM and crew went and got the coach. A few days later, the coach and crew went and got the offensive coordinator and defensive coordinator. And while those that are not in Washington would say, well, yeah, that's how it's done. That's not always how things are done in Washington. So, right. From your perspective, I know from a fan perspective, it is very refreshing that we might be doing things the right way. We're getting quality people, and just the way things are going about is the professional way. I like your input on what you think about how the organization itself is being put together, even before we get to free agency and moving forward through the draft and everything else.
Oh yeah, I mean, I was elated when they got Adam Peters. Bowie TV, we did your top coaches, top GMs. I had GMs. One of my colleagues, Darrell Owens, he had coaches, and my number one was Adam Peters. So it made me look smart. It made me look very smart. I mean, I am smart with me. I was like, oh, I was even impressed with myself with that one. But I really was, it's an important role. And the previous regime, Coach Rivera basically played in that role.
Yeah.
He was the final decision maker in how, even when Martin Mayhew and others would have advice, it was always he was the ultimate decision maker, right? I knew that Adam Peters does not operate in that way. I know that he trusts his coaches, his staff, his evaluators, and he's quite the evaluation talent himself. And so I said, when you talk about roster building, and I'm a depth person, right? So I always say, because everyone was going back to, the Trey Lance thing. Okay, but what was their contingency plan? Because nobody could have called Brock Purdy being the Brock Purdy that we want. No one could have called that. And then in the rest of the team matters as well. So just from an overall building perspective, I'm like, that guy is good. He's good. And this ownership group needed to get that right. They needed a splash. They needed someone strong. So that we're not cycling people in and out every 3 and 4 years, every time there's a losing season, right?
Correct.
So he was top of my list. I mean, of course, I had some others as well that ended up, like I had, from the Ravens, but I think he went over to the Chargers, and a few others. But number one, Adam Peters. I thought that was amazing. The coaching, the head coaching hire that's where it started getting a little messy. I was like, okay, everybody, hey. We were doing good. We were on a roll.
Right.
We weren't. And then it was like, what is happening? But here's what I'll say at the end of that, though. And I will have to give credit to media colleague John Camp for this one. I will give him credit because he posted an NFLPA survey that had players rate coaches. And Dan Quinn was high, very high on that. And I said, okay. That's when I knew. I mean, we had our list of head coaches we wanted. No, Dan Quinn wasn't on there. But I said, it's something to be said when players say, I want to play for that person. I want to play for that guy. And hey, I actually went to Super Bowl 51. In real life, I probably should have told that story of how I even started the business, how I got into the business. So, I mean, Falcons fans, God bless all of y'all. I hope you one day can get over that loss. It was terrible. And I've never forgotten about Dan Quinn because of that. But that doesn't matter, right? The players really, really respect him, and he is well respected across the league. And it's a different caliber of player because a lot of people like Ron Rivera. He is well regarded across the league, but it was still from a playing perspective that those questions were asked, and Dan Quinn rated very high. So then I understood, okay, this is the direction that they went in. So that was a little messy for me, though. I'm gonna still say I was with them on the GM. The head coaching thing got a little messy.
Well, let me ask you this. You say it was messy. Messy from what perspective? Meaning because Dan wasn't on your list, or because it took so long and all the other coaches was getting hired? What do you define as in messy?
I thought it was messy because if I felt like there were too many cooks in the kitchen at that point in time. There's a lot from an ownership perspective in the ownership group. And I was just like, if everybody gets a chance to weigh in, who are you going to pick? How are you going to pick someone? And then, we were into Senior Bowl week. So I was hoping that whomever it was, you at least have an opportunity to get into Senior Bowl week. Then, of course, there were so many changes with the then current commander staff. Now they got to try to find something else. And it was probably just a week too late. And in my opinion, it was like, after the championship games, right? And then to not end up with any of the championship games coaches. it made me feel like, well, we could have got this done a
long
bit
time
ago.
ago.
Right.
But
Well, I won't, for the sake of this podcast and time, I won't get into the Ben Johnson thing because that was a whole thing. So we'll just let that
the whole
go.
thing too.
So my question to you then is since you didn't really have Dan Quinn high on your list of coaches, I see where you stood then, but now fast forward to where we are today. Has your opinion about the Dan Quinn hire changed? Is it still the same, or do you feel different about it now that we've kind of gotten into this and got a little runtime with it?
It has changed. I'm gonna go back to the player opinion, which is huge, big, and so you got to listen to that, right? You got to listen to the people that are out there in the trenches on the field, and
Correct.
their opinion of him is extremely high. I'm also going to say the way in which they've gone about organizing and structuring the staff, they got an A from me on that one. They've done an incredible job. The coordinators were one thing, but once I saw how they were building the position coaches, I said, all right, now we're back, everybody. I'm back. I was worried, and that's what I needed to see. And these are, there's position coaches that have been head coaches.
Isn't that crazy?
It's crazy.
It's crazy. And that's what I was telling some friends here. I said, you got guys that would have been coordinators and head coaches as position coaches here. And I said, Bobby Slowick, Mike, is it McDonald, whatever his name is, from Baltimore, and then you got Ben Johnson. I said, listen, these guys may go on to be great head coaches, but right now, today, they're not putting this staff together. I just don't believe that.
No.
And I think Dan Quinn is a big reason why we have guys like Anthony Lynn, Cliff Kingsbury, and some of these guys, the guy Brian Johnson from Philadelphia. These guys come in as position coaches. Some of them are here, and I wasn't even clear what the title is. They're just like, we don't know. We're just part of the staff, right?
Yep.
Yeah, passing game coordinators. Like, you're not even the coordinator. You're just the passing game coordinator. And it's like these guys could have went other places and got higher roles on someone's staff, and yet they decided to come to Washington. And that cannot be understated, the impact of Dan Quinn. A little bit of adaptation, but I think a hell of a lot with Dan Quinn.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And when we had our kind of meet and greet media availability with the assistant coaches, that's all they were talking about was, DQ. I mean, we had a combine, you see people, and that's an opportunity for those across the league who have worked together. See, every time I would see DQ, somebody was stopping him, whether it was a former player or a coach from somewhere else. He's getting a lot of love out here. He gets a lot of love out here. And so I was like, all right, okay. Think y'all got a good thing here. And that staff is they did a great job. And I don't know if your listeners or viewers, people have an opportunity to really take a look at this coaching staff. They are good.
Yeah. Yes. He learned from Atlanta, right?
Yes.
That 360 review. And we all know the story if you follow the Commanders, and he talks about when Shanahan and LaFleur and all those guys left, there was no one to really fill that void. And in this case, he's making sure that's not going to happen. And I tell people all the time, I said, I wasn't overly excited about the Dan Quinn hire myself. And I said, but the one thing I got to say is we're getting a better version of Dan Quinn today than what the Falcons got. And that's not just because he lost that Super Bowl. It's just that man truly looked, evaluated himself, a self-evaluation, see what he did wrong, and said, I'm going to make some changes. And I think we are reaping the benefits of that.
Yep.
And that's not to say that we all know at the end of the day, the product on the field has to matter, but I like the head start they've gotten on this deal. So,
yep.
Yeah. And I've said, us being here in Dallas, that I think Cowboy fans are going to look a year or two at the most down the road, and they're going to say to themselves, we let the wrong coach go, right? Because there's a lot of controversy about McCarthy. Was he going to be around or was he not going to be around? And they could have made the shift from McCarthy to Dan Quinn and let Dan Quinn make, I don't know if he made the exact same hires, but he could have done some of this manipulation from a head coach perspective from the Cowboys. And I anticipate Washington is going to have the success based off of everything we've seen. They're doing, we'll start talking about free agency here in a second, but all the moves that they've made from a organization perspective, from a coaching perspective, from a free agent approach that they're doing everything. And I anticipate they're going to do the same thing in the draft. They're going to look back and go, man, Cowboys are going to say we could have had that and we let it go. We let him walk out the door when we could have made changes, after the loss to Green Bay. So anyway, time will tell on that.
I mean, and they've been talking about, you all may have heard this in press conferences about the collaborative approach that they want to take, right? In terms of, it's not just one person with the right answer or one person that gets to make the final decision. They are collectively talking about schemes, talking about the type of mindset they want to have, therefore getting those types of, getting those players. And you could see it. I'm like, okay, some of the things that they're saying, I don't think it's just lip service. Right. Now, based that, I can remind, I think I posted, it was you all, I think, because I made a joke about when they signed, and I know we're getting in free agency in a minute, but this is really about Ken Norton Jr. When I asked Coach Ken Norton Jr., the type of linebacker, what are you looking for in this position group? And the reason why I asked that question is because I'm hard on the linebackers. I'm a very tough critic. Yeah. And that has been a position of need for quite some time in my
and ignored
Commanders, and I really wanted to know. And I mean, and I know that he, everybody knows Cowboys and he's, been a coach and all those things. And he, brought up London Fletcher. And I was like, okay, speaking of him, what are you looking for? He said, I'm looking for London Fletcher types. And I think, I don't know who responded back to me, but it was like, oh, so off the record, he said Bobby Wagner. Well, actually, off the record, he kind of did. And so it was like, he was just going through. I just started listing out potential linebackers who might be a free agent and everything. And he was great about it, but he didn't say, yeah, go report it. But I mean, to that point, this is a position coach who is able to have a voice in the types of players that he wants in his locker room, on his field, at that position. And his coordinator and the head coach and the general manager went out and got him. That is how it is. It's not, we've heard it in the past where it's like AP is making, the general manager is making all the decisions or the owner made all the decisions on the players. That is not that anymore. So going back to your point, Ken, about the professionalism, this is how an NFL organization is supposed to operate.
Right.
Well, I love it.
You've got so much talent and skill in the room, in the building, from an evaluation perspective. Some of the guys have played in the NFL. They've coached a lot of players over all the years. They know talent. And why wouldn't you use that knowledge and skill set that these people have to make you and your team better, right? From Josh Harris all the way down. If I own a company, I want to pull in everybody's talent. I don't want to, ignore the talent, and I just make the decisions. That's not the way to success. So, yeah.
Well, let me just ask one more question about the coaching staff, and then we'll get into some of the players. So, as great as we've all talked about the Dan Quinn and all of the position coaches that they've hired, do you have any concern that there may be too many voices or worrying about all of these personnel? So in other words, we got a guy who's been a coordinator, who's now position coach, having to now give input, and maybe now his coordinator doesn't listen to him. Well, you're not listening to me because you're the position coach, but hey, I've been a coordinator and maybe you should listen to me. So are we concerned that there's too many of these, I'm going to quote unquote alpha guys here in the room, in the building? Is there a little bit of concern for that?
Yeah, I definitely thought about that. Like, I was like, I got too many type A's around here. Myself included, I guess. But I mean, I was just like, it's a lot of type A's in this media availability space, man. This is going to be interesting. But I think I think the trade-off is you being able to make the call on who you want at your position.
Okay.
Right.
You know what I mean? That's how
Mhm.
I'm sensing it. That's at least how I'm hoping it works out.
Okay.
I know that was one of my concerns as well with, you know, with the OC, right? I
Okay.
didn't know how I felt about, Coach Kingsbury at first, but then once I saw the staff, the support staff, I said, okay, this could work. This could work.
Okay.
So we'll see who kind of, I don't want to say has to shift their personality, but it will be a trade-off for sure, I think.
And and it's one of those things where I think the first year, I think there's going to be a little filling out period. I think everyone's excited to be a part of the staff, the fresh change, you've heard a lot of people talk about the vibe in the building and all of that good stuff. And I think the first year is going to be all right. But whether that's success or failure, however that goes, then will the personalities come out and want to take charge?
Right.
That kind of deal. So, okay. Go ahead, Ken.
Yeah, well, I was just going to say, and that kind of leads us into free agency. There was no secret that Washington came into free agency as the team with the highest salary cap, money available. And, I made a prediction, before that there's a strong chance that out of the 22 starters on opening day last year, at least half of them will be gone, will be changed. And you look at free agent, we haven't even hit the draft yet. And, half might've been, underselling the volume of changes that's taking place. Not every single, free agent is necessarily going to be a starter. There's a lot of starters. When you start looking at free agents that weren't, their contracts weren't renewed, and the free agents that we did bring in, it's an overturn. I think I lost track at like 18, 20 different free agents.
I mean, yeah, another one came through today, and I was just kind of like, shrug shoulders. I was just like, okay, all right. So we have some press conferences in the morning. Okay, great. But I'm like, well, how much money did he have? That's what it was like.
Yeah. That's crazy. And so you're looking at it. We're excited. We're like, just bring them on. Just keep bringing them in. Competition is great. That's what we hear. And you're like, oh man, we got to go interview these guys and get to know them. And I know it's a good problem to have, right?
Oh, sure.
That you get to kind of go and do this. What do you think about the fact that Washington has brought in all of these players, but only I think 3 of them, maybe 4 with Cornelius Lucas, I think are returning players? Because we have a long list of free agent guys out there.
It says a lot.
It does, doesn't it?
It says a lot. A lot. I mean, and these are, starters. And I know, I'm trying to think, I don't want to misquote whether it was Adam Peters or Dan Quinn that said what they were finding as they were starting to at Combine in the local media scrum. They said, what they were starting to find was that, players that might have been great in the previous regime don't fit this one, and they're trying to figure that out. And I think that's what we saw. I mean, I think that's what we saw in terms of who they were going to have to give the big bucks to in order to keep and all those things. They were like, we're going a different route. And they weren't afraid of that, right? It's like, hey, we watched the tape, maybe see if they fit. And they didn't. And so they just went a different direction.
At 4-13, how much great can be on the team, right?
Exactly.
The whole roster isn't trash. Don't get me wrong, but there's a whole lot of room for improvement. It's obvious that you're the number 2 pick in the draft coming up this year.
Exactly. And I mean, and it's a lot of talent in the draft. I mean, this was a good free agency. Right before free agency, I did a show and I was like, hey, I know that we all have our favorites, and even for us as media, we build relationships. Absolutely,
Right.
we don't want to see, you end up. You never want to really see anybody leave. It's almost like in school where it's like you'll have your friends and now you move. Where you moving? Oh, and so okay, you got to make new friends, I guess. But right at 4 and 13, who are you really making the case to keep?
Right.
Probably not a whole lot, especially with basically an entirely new coaching staff. So they had the money. If ever they were going to be 4 and 13, this was the year to do it because they had so much money. But you have a different person leading the charge on how you go out and how you spend that money. I think that's what I've been so impressed by. I've been saying my favorite free agent off signing person is Adam Peters. That's my favorite off-season signing because I'm like, how much money does he have? And they're being smart with the money. They're making these 1-year deals because they're not going to lock in on people unless they prove it.
I love the approach. I love the approach.
And what I also noticed that overall they weren't going for home runs. Right. They're like, we're going to get a whole lot of base hits and doubles here. To use a baseball analogy in football here, but they were putting together, when I look at their free agents, they're putting together a core team. And then, whether it's next year, whether it's through the draft, they'll go and get those difference maker players. And it seems that that's their approach right now.
Yeah. So real quick, Candi, you're frozen on my screen. Is she frozen on your screen,
yes.
Ken?
Yeah, I think I can't see. My camera is on, but I can't see.
Yeah. It's the problem. I'm going to move you to the backstage and see about bringing you back and see if that changes it. So.
Y'all want me to go out and come back in?
Yeah, you could do that. I'll bring you right back in if that works for you.
Yep. 1 second.
Sure.
But yeah, man. Go ahead, Ken. Go ahead.
Well, I was going to say while we're talking about her, waiting for her to come back. The moves that they've made overall since we did our last podcast is, unless I missed some, the most recent
she's back.
Free agents. Yeah. Welcome back. And the last was saying the early in the first few days of free agency, they weren't touching on any cornerbacks, and all of a sudden, bang, 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 they go out and pull in a few cornerbacks, and they have a plan, right? They have a plan, and it almost looks like they have a plan A, plan B, plan C, and we're going to work our plan. And just the process that they have gone through, not only evaluating the players, but evaluating the process of free agents and reading the tea leaves to know where I'm going to be able to go and not go. It doesn't sound like they've been in a bidding war with anybody. It sounds like, the players that they've gone after, they went and got, right? You haven't seen players that come in here and then they go somewhere else and yada, yada, yada. They've put together a plan, and for everything that I see is they've executed on that plan. And that's harder to do than putting a plan together sometimes.
Oh yeah. I mean, there's been no drama. Knock on wood. Everybody, say a few prayers and Hail Marys, because there hasn't been it just, and you're like, oh my gosh, to your point, players they go out and get them.
Right.
And hey, and maybe there's someone they tried to get, they didn't get. Okay, moving right along. Like you said, they're executing all of their options, and if they get the first one, perfect. If not, there's others, and they move on. With the cornerback, that was the DB thing. That was it was two positions that I was like, I know there's a ton of focus on the quarterback. Absolutely, it has to be, right? But I was like, I felt like it was forgotten about the need for defensive ends, right? Everybody forgot, Montez and Chase are not on the team. They need to figure out who their starting defensive ends are going to be. That is a big deal. And I also knew, of course, Kendall Fuller, from a DP perspective, from a CB and then the safety and Cam Curl. I'm like, I'm not sure they're going to resign them.
Right.
And I always feel like the DB group is a forgotten position group. I guess because the league is so focused on high powered offenses and one-handed touchdown catches and all of that glitz and glamour with that sometimes they forget how important the role of a defensive back is to just completely be disruptive and get those pick six or pass breakups or whatever they can do to make an impact in critical moments of the game, which we saw. We see those things a lot in playoffs, but sometimes you don't see it as much during the season.
Right.
And I said, those are going to be two positions that I would watch and see what they do. Of course, linebacker, because I'm just kind of tough on that position because it's been such a need for so long for this team. But I was like, they don't have that figured out, but they're going to get it figured out. Let me be clear. I'm not concerned. Yeah. But what we're seeing is them addressing all of those things, of course, with offensive line as well, but they're addressing them because they're well aware that they need to lock in on those positions. They're very important. And like you said, 4-13, that's not a sign that
there needs to be some upgrades along the way for these guys. What I like about it is, if we're really comparing this regime to the last regime, I recall during free agency, we had some needs going into the free agency and the draft, and Ron, in fairness, addressed those same needs. The difference is the type and the quality of the player that this regime is bringing in that gives you a little bit of confidence than the guys that run. Ron brought in a lot of his former players. These guys are bringing in guys that have played for some of these coaches, but they're still just bringing in players and bringing quality players. The old lineman that Ron brought in, there was question marks about Gates playing center because I think he had played guard, but then we were going to use him as a center. There was some questions. There are some questions about Wiley coming in from Kansas City. There was some questions about his pass protection, and they brought him in, and he struggled during the season. The guys they're bringing in to fill positions now, these guys are just they were depth players in a lot of cases who now get to be starters, or they were seasoned veterans, and we know what they bring to the table. So there's not a question mark, or I guess you should say the only question mark is what's left in the tank. But we have proven guys at proven positions to address holes and needs, as opposed to just simply questioning whether or not this guy can play. Mm-hmm. And I think that's the difference in the quality of the players that Adam Peters and Dan Quinn and those guys are bringing in, as opposed to some of the guys Ron brought in. Because Ron brought in some guys that were old, some guys that was injury prone. I mean, I can't remember Trey Turner and I forgot the other guy. I mean, these guys were just clearly
Norwell
on the way out, and they were Norwell. They were just not great signings. And I know, just from a statistic standpoint, not every one of these guys, these free agents that they brought in, is going to work out. Right. But they brought in a whole lot of them and some guys that can play that I think is going to give us a great chance for a lot of these guys to be successful. And that's what got me excited about it.
Well, one thing you said that's key, you mentioned players that used to play another position. The previous team was famous for trying to turn a player into something else, and it's just like, use them at their strengths, use them at what they're good at, use them at what comes natural to them and their natural skills and abilities, the things they've been doing since they were children. There's no need to try to, what, I think you'd be a really good, kind of like what he did with Antonio Gibson, right? I mean, he was a wide receiver.
Jackson.
Exactly. Right. And for what? I mean, why? And to that point, going back to the coaches as well, they're going out and they're getting players that can do. I don't have to teach you how to do it my way. You coming in knowing you coming in knowing you're ready to rock. I don't have to try to get you to do something different, because I like you and you're of good character. No, I like you, you're of good character, and you can play the kind of ball that I'm looking for you to play on Sunday. That's what it
yes.
is. And that's what we're seeing. You know, because that takes a long time to try to give somebody the grace period, if you will, to get up to speed to your way of doing things
And
versus
to learn something new,
just to
something a
learn
little bit
something
different.
new. It's too, yeah. Mm-mm.
Yeah. Position flex. I mean, if you got a guy that's versatile that can do multiple things, that's one thing. But to
Right.
try and get a guy and try to make him do something different, yeah, I was so over all of the different position flex thing, man. It was just wearing me out because, to your point, you know, you got a guy, and I love Antonio Gibson. Outside of him fumbling the ball all the time,
Right.
I think the
Right.
guy's a hell of a talent. But I don't think we used him right. So we tried to make him a running back, and then there's a guy sitting behind him who's a natural running back who can't get on the field. And Antonio Gibson is struggling in certain areas. And when you start breaking down the film, they'll say he cut back too soon or he wasn't patient behind his lineman. Well, there's a guy behind him who knows exactly how to do that, but he can't see the field because we're trying to continue to teach Antonio Gibson how to be a natural running back.
Right.
And we're leaving yardage on the field
Mm-hmm.
because he outran his protection and those types of things. And I know that's way depth and probably what we're trying to get into, but it was just so frustrating to
Mm-hmm.
see them continue trying to make guys do things that they're not comfortable doing.
Yep.
And we saw it up and down the roster with some of this stuff, and it was just okay. And
Well,
that's why I was truly I was okay with Antonio leaving because I'm like, let him go, and maybe someone can use him in a proper manner because we're clearly not going to use him to be that type of a runner. We were trying to force him to be just a true running back who, oh, by the way, can catch the ball as a former receiver. And I was like, okay, I was kind of over that a little bit.
Yeah, and when you talk about the flex, you know, and how Candi, you kind of alluded to a little bit there was, you know, I don't want my starters to have the flex, right? My backup offensive lineman, yeah, I like your flex because, you know, I don't know if the guard or the tackle, the right guard, left guard, whatever, I don't know what position people are going to get hurt. But my starters, I don't need the flex. I need you to be the best fill in the blank position that you are, and because if you're the best tackle, why would I flex you? I'm not going to flex you. You're locked in. But as my backup linebackers and backup position players, yeah, I want to flex ends up helping because you don't know where your injuries are going to come.
Right. Exactly.
So,
right.
Go ahead, Rich.
No, I was just going to ask you. So, with all the players that have been signed, Candi, who you would say would be your favorite signing thus far?
Or even a couple.
I have two answers to this.
Okay.
I knew that the fan base was waiting for a splash signing. And so when they signed Bobby Wagner, I did smile. Now that's actually funny enough. It's not my favorite one though. Okay. But I have to admit, I smiled really hard with Bobby Wagner because I remembered what Coach Norton told me. Mm-hmm. And I was like,
there it is.
Okay.
All right.
Welcome,
there
Bobby
it is.
Wagner. So I was just like, all right, because sometimes when you depending on what you ask, they'll tell you without telling you, you know.
Right.
My favorite one was Frankie Louvu.
Okay.
Really like Frankie Louvu.
Okay. And you're not talking about his looks now, Candi.
No, not what I meant.
Because I say that because when all the pictures getting posted on social media and all the women are just, this guy.
Lord, yeah. No, that's not what I meant.
I'm teasing.
But you're not denying that he's not easy on your eyes either, right?
You know, hey, listen, it's not hard to cover him. You know, that's difficult. So,
but no, as a player, I'm kidding. But as a player, yeah,
no, he's great. And Panthers fans were pretty upset.
Yeah, they were not happy that the organization let him go. Yeah,
absolutely. So that's how you always be able to know if a player is good based on how their fan base feels about him. Like nobody's really saying much. You know, but Frankie Louvu, but he's excellent. I think he's a great player. I think not that the others don't, because I feel like Jeremy, Bobby, all them, they still exemplify what Joe Witt Jr. says he wants. He wants his players to violently.
He said, I want him to ride violently.
Ride violently. I was like, is that okay to say? I guess
Yeah.
so. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
That's Frankie Louisville.
It's
Like
funny.
he,
It's funny you say that because when he said that at the press conference, I was like, I know you probably say that. That's like locker room talk. Like, but can he say this at the press conference?
I said the same thing. I was
Because
in
that
there
was
like,
yeah.
I
He
think
said
I looked at I think I looked at Donna Hopkins. When I looked at Don, like I wasn't supposed to, but I think I was just like, did he just okay, yeah, he did. All right, fuck that.
I thought the same thing. I was like, okay, coach, maybe you want to keep that in the locker room, but okay.
Like,
He said we're
okay.
gonna arrive violently. I was like,
Yeah.
okay.
And but look at who he's you know, that's what they went out and got.
Yeah.
And so Frankie Louisville is my favorite free agent signing. And I don't think a lot of Commanders fans, at least that I engage with through my shows and everything, really knew who he was. And like, you definitely got to check out some of his tape. I said, and look at Panthers fans, they're unraveling a little bit between losing him and Shen. I mean, they are, and they had bad seasons. You know, Panthers had a bad season too, but they are great players. Going back to the fact that they're picked up players that would start.
Right.
Yes.
Oh, I love it. And from a Panthers perspective, obviously had a bad year, but the reason why they can't re-sign these players is because they're not in a good cap space whatsoever. They're in that whole organization between losing they should have the number 1 draft pick this year, but time will tell. But they wasted it on last year's number 1 draft pick that looks like it may end up being a bust. And that, along with salary cap issues, they're going to have some challenges in Carolina on building that team. That's when you have a bad team, Washington set themselves up to get out of the hole, to where Carolina they're going to be in the hole for a while, unless they just hit some home runs on some players through the draft. They've got a long haul to become a contending team, to where the way Washington is going about it with, they've got good draft picks, a number of draft picks, free agency, and the staff that they're putting together, things could change quickly in Washington.
Yeah. Well, we could as Dan said, we're recalibrating. We're not rebuilding, we're recalibrating.
Yeah.
So let me just say this too. I think a lot of fans were happy to see Ron Rivera go. Candi, on our show here, and I don't know if it comes with maturity a little bit, but we recognize the business of football from a fan, and it's a hard business. But to your point, you build a relationship with these people. There's another side to this business, and that's the human side of this. We all recognize that there was probably a change needed in Washington from the head coach position, but that didn't make Ron Rivera a bad guy. And I think Ron even probably knew it was time for a change. And what I think a lot of fans were celebrating him being fired. People have to understand his regime allowed us to be in this position. Ron, even though he signed some players that we probably question their ability to play at this point in their career, they signed a lot of guys to 1-year contracts. Those 1-year contracts are now up, and the new regime is able to build that. He didn't sign bad contracts, and now we have all this cap space money, right? So, yeah, Ron's not here, but this is somewhat of a gift from the last regime to have us in this position that we're so celebrating to be in, to go sign people, have all this money, and to maneuver all these draft picks. That has a lot to do with the previous regime that was here, and that doesn't get talked about a lot. And we've talked about it here, but it certainly doesn't get talked about on social media.
That's an excellent point. And I had to make a joke one day. I was like, it's not like this money grow on trees. It came from exactly what you said. Yeah. And a lot of it's hard to tell. And let me say this. I absolutely adore Ron Rivera. He's been super kind to me. Many of the coaches have. Let me be really clear. Many of them have been. But Ron and I are definitely good people, for sure. after the Montez and Chase trade, I had a one-on-one off the record, but on the record, because I told him I wasn't going to record it or anything, but I was going to take excerpts from it, from my show, because I was a little alarmed by it, because of what I felt like the impact would be to the locker room. And we had that very candid conversation, and it was great. And we've had other candid conversations, but he took time to answer my questions because of my sincere concerns as a reporter, and just like knowing, like, did you just cash in the season in front of everybody's face?
Right.
Like, how is everybody supposed to show up to work now? And we had a real conversation about that. And he was, I will tell you this though, he was really sure about his team. He really thought they were going to win some foot. He did.
Wow.
He did. It wasn't a, nobody purposely has a 4-13 season, because what happens has happened. The man still doesn't have a job right now.
Right.
So that wasn't on purpose. He was sure the minimal moves they made last year, the year before, we just a quarterback away. He went and got Carson Wentz. He meant that. And it's unbelievable, because it's like, Ron, come on now, Ron. You could have known.
Wow.
You are not. But he really did believe in that team. He really did believe in the moves that he made and the decisions that he made and the players that he got. And it all backfired. But then you got all this money. Right. I don't think people
don't talk about that.
Right. They got all this money. He really didn't think the season was going to go as bad as it did. He really didn't.
Yeah.
But now you got all this money. It is a gift. I mean, I guess being bad and not making a lot of splash signings worked in the benefit for sure. And there's still money.
And think about it, but that's part of what made the job attractive. The draft picks,
I mean,
cap money, all of that stuff.
I was like, man, I wouldn't have time to be dealing with all this. But you take a genius like a Adam Peters, and he's like, the world is my oyster. I can do whatever I want.
I can work with this.
Yeah, and you're giving me a company credit card also, from a spending perspective on free agents. I'm sure there's a lot of GMs that were under contract that said, man, if and it could, I don't want it to come and backfire, but if Adam isn't successful, we know who to blame, right? Because he had everything there for him to be successful. He couldn't ask for more from Adam Peters' perspective to be successful. So I'm
excited about it. So just real quick here, before we wrap up here, we got a few more questions for you. But as I asked you, which was your favorite, which one made you scratch your head a little bit? Maybe not one that you didn't like. And if there's one you didn't like, that's fine too. But maybe one that you go, I don't know about that one. But
I haven't really done that yet. Let me also go back to talk about another favorite, because I forgot to mention this. And I think this is important, because it's always overlooked. They upgraded the kicker, the kicker and the long snapper. That's very important, people.
Did you say long snapper?
Yes.
Reggie and I had a conversation, and he wanted it off the air, and I was like, all right, I don't want to overemphasize the long snapper, but it's one of those things that you should never know the long snapper's name, right?
I mean, right, because if you do, he's done something terribly wrong.
Exactly.
You're gonna be like, who is that guy? Yes, exactly. If he's doing everything right, and it's a veteran group, they have worked with each other, they know each other well, that should work out. Now, to the question that I was like, like what? I was actually, it might have been the re-signings were fine. I was actually shocked. And I like Jamison Crowder, let me be clear. But I was just like, they re-signed Jamison. That's interesting. So it must, Coach Izzo must really feel like there's more that can be done, or Jamison can definitely bring more to that return role.
Right.
Because after that good week in like Atlanta, you didn't really hear much else from Jameson. So and I'm gonna be honest, I don't really know what they're doing with the CB, bro. I don't know. I'm trying to figure it out myself. I don't think they know though.
Yeah, I tell Ken and I had talked about it. I say it just makes me wonder then if they just feel like there's something that they can coach out of these guys that the previous regime just wasn't getting out of them. Because we did see after Jack Del Rio was gone and Ron took over calling the defense, the season was over, but the defense did play better. And Ron said that he was going to, I think in one of you guys' press conference, he's just going to simplify the defense. And of course, we heard the new regime coaches talk about if the players don't understand it, then that means we're coaching it different or there's something's wrong with the system. So maybe they feel like, hey, if we can simplify this thing along with our confidence in our coaching staff, maybe they can get something and unlock something out of Emmanuel Forbes. There's something with St. Juice. And then when you look at the length and the size of those two, along with the guys they've signed, we got some big corners.
It's a big corners.
Right. And then what are they going to do? You know, there's still the draft that we have coming up. And so I wonder if that's where they're going to focus on trying to get that other guy. But it says a lot to me that St. Juice and Emmanuel Forbes must be big in their plans. And I'm okay with that. I mean, I really hope Emmanuel Forbes pan out. I've not given up on that kid. I know if you know, social media gives you this view sometimes and you think that's the majority view, but everyone was already out on this kid. And Ken and we talked about it on one of our episodes. It's like, but they also was out on Quan Martin early in the season, and now everyone's raving about Quan Martin. But early in the season, they was talking about how can't believe we spent a second round pick on it. We should have gotten this guy over here. And now all of a sudden everyone's loving Quan Martin. So it's like, let's not give up on these guys too soon, man. You know? So, well, that's my 2 cents on that.
What do you think? I mean, you mentioned about linebackers, and it always kind of surprised me under the Ron Rivera regime, with Rivera being a linebacker and Del Rio being a linebacker. I mean, that's 1 and 2.
Oh, yeah.
And they never put a priority on linebacker. Now that they got, you know, Bobby Wagner in and
Frankie Louvu,
and then I anticipate Jamin Davis being closer to the player that we hoped he would be, with the defensive scheme that they end up putting in and the people that they have around him. Because as good or bad as you want to make Jamin Davis, he's been the best one there. And so the talent to his right or left, you know, when he was playing middle linebacker, you know, when they were running with 3 linebackers, there was a big drop off, you know, from Jamin Davis to Cody, or whoever is on the other side. You're not going to see that drop off with Jamin Davis now, right? With I guess Wagner's Bobby Wagner probably going to play in the middle and move Jamin back out on the outside, but it's a different group of linebackers he's playing with now by far.
Oh yes, it should make Jamin far better.
Yeah,
and like you said, he'll probably be the player that he was supposed to be out of his draft class, right? I mean, some days I would be sitting in the press box and I would just be like, can somebody just go whisper in Jamin's ear, go get the football? I mean, my God, what are we doing? Like, it's just like, what is he doing? You know, why is he playing so far off the ball? Jamin, go get the football. Why is anybody? That is where he thrives.
Right.
Yes.
Like literally football. Right. You go get it. And it would be amazing. Like, what do they have them doing? But to that point, this goes back to, I think this is a coaching staff that maybe saw those things, right? When they were able to, because it was like a mad dash, right? Once they all got on board, they got to hurry up and try to evaluate. And the combine was like right around the corner. Right. So they're trying to evaluate, watch all this film, watch all this. And they I'm sure they saw it. And they're like, we pair Jamin with a Bobby Wagner and a Frankie Louvu, and the position group totally changes.
And some of these guys had already scouted Washington, right? As they play. I mean, Brian Johnson was familiar with him. Dan Quinn, I'm sure, had seen. So some of these coaches had already seen some of the tape on a guy like Jamin Davis to knew a little bit about his skill set and stuff. And to your point, if we pair him up with some other guys, we could probably unlock some different potential from this guy. But I got two more questions for you, Ken. I don't know what else you got, but my two questions around the quarterback position. And then I can let you out of here. But my first question to you is outside of the obvious. My other question is, what do you think about the Sam Howell trade and the compensation that we got for him?
I thought it was great. I mean, I wasn't sure. It was like, oh, we got 2 picks for Sam. Okay, all right, well, cool. But until I saw the Justin Fields trade, and I was like, well, let me go back to my notes, because did Adam Peters just fleece the Seattle Seahawks? Because how that doesn't happen, and because of him coming from the 49ers, I'm like, dang, Adam he's got some good relationships. he's making some moves, because that was a great deal. I saw some in the fan base were like, but we lost a player. And I know others were thinking, there was going to be like a quarterback competition. I'm like, hey, listen, I don't know Coach Cliff that well yet, but the little bit I have been around him doesn't strike me as the kind of man that cares about a quarterback competition. I also think that quarterback competition is something that we've just been accustomed to. Whether you're a fan or you cover it, it's always a quarterback competition. Yes, there will be competition. Yes. But they know who they want.
Right.
I don't think it's, we got to see and figure out who's going to be the week 1 starter. I don't think it's necessarily a lot of that. But I thought the compensation was great, especially comparatively speaking. Once that Steelers Bears trade went down, I'm like, now, wait a minute, Commanders fans. This is what I'm saying. Adam Peters is doing an excellent job.
That was kind of my approach. Mac Jones, a first-round pick, got a 6th-rounder. Pickett, 4th-rounder. Justin Fields, as we know, a 6th-rounder. And then here, 5th-round quarterback, Sam Howell, and we end up pulling in this third-round pick. So I'm like, what are people complaining about here? So that was kind of my thought. I just was curious as someone, covering the team.
Oh, no, it was good.
What your thoughts were. Okay, good. My second question to you surrounding the quarterback position is obviously number 2. And let me first say that Twitter is always talking about the quarterback position and the Jayden Daniels and Drake May, and we should trade up to get Caleb Williams and all this kind of stuff. I love, and can express how much I love the fact that the leaks, at least from a fan, aren't coming out of that building. Maybe you guys as beat reporters hear stuff, but I love the fact that they're not leaking anything, just like they did with the head coach. They let everyone else do all the talking, but they are not leaking anything. And I love the fact that we're not going to know what the hell they're doing on draft day until I can't even think of his name now. The commissioner goes up there and read with the number 2 pick, the Washington Commanders select, and we're all going to be sitting here waiting. So I love the fact that they're not leaking this out. Probably make your job a little tougher sometime, but as a fan, I love the fact that they're keeping it all sealed up and tight-lipped. But with that being the case, who's your pick at number 2?
Well, only because I started to watch moves, right? I need to listen to what they say, watch what they're doing. So when they picked up Marcus Mariota, because I know everybody was, oh God, Marcus Mariota. Only thing I came up with was, well, does Marcus Mariota mean Jayden Daniels?
Okay.
Right. I'm thinking Coach Cliff. I'm thinking scheme. I'm thinking system. I'm thinking different, certain similarities. And it's not, and me saying that has nothing to do with preference. Right. Okay. I'm like, get the one you all think is going to fit the system and be most successful for what you're trying to do.
Correct.
Today, not down the road, or trying to, turn him into something that he's not. So that was only my little clue, because for a split second, I will be very honest on you all show, I thought the Bears were keeping Justin Fields. I was like, well, you know what? And that's because I like Justin Fields. And Justin Fields don't get me on my Justin Fields rant, because that was another, I've only had a few episodes on my show where I was not pleased and I kept it cool, but I'm like, come on, Ron. Y'all know Justin. Y'all know these people. Like, why do you just let him ruin you like this? How could you be so unprepared? So from that perspective, I didn't see anything wrong with Justin Fields, and still don't. I watched plenty of games, even once Montez was there, because I wanted to keep up with how Montez was doing. And so I thought they were going to keep Justin Fields. I'm gonna tell you, Combine, the general manager, that's another one who folks might be sleeping. He's doing a good job.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
The Bears GM is doing a very good job, for sure. Shout out to Ryan Poles. He's doing a great job. I thought they were going to keep him. And here we are all on a nice Saturday. They disrupting our Saturday evening. We traded Justin Fields to Pittsburgh. I was like, oh, so you are going to go and draft Caleb. I seriously were like, they're about to trade this pick. They're going to keep Justin. Something's about to go down, probably between the Commanders and the Bears. They're going to go get Marvin Harrison Jr. They're going to keep Justin Fields. And then they pulled that move, and I said, well, there goes my theory of them going to get Caleb, because now the Bears are like, yeah, we know we don't have a quarterback. We're just waiting for Caleb. Like, clearly, like everybody just showed their hand today. Yeah. So I just think it's either Drake May or Jaden Daniels, unless something else happens. But I doubt that. I think it'll probably be Jaden.
You think it'd be Jaden Daniels? You said
Jaden Daniels.
Okay, I don't have a personal preference. As we've talked about here, is a lot of the mock drafts having the quarterbacks going 1, 2, and 3, and I've just said, just based on history, maybe one of those guys were paying out, right? Just based on the way it works. And I said, I just hope we get the one, whichever one it is. I'm going to leave it up to Adam Peters, Dan Quinn, Cliff, and those guys, and all of your area scouts and everyone that gets paid to do those evaluations. I'm going to let those guys do it. And I'm going to support whichever one it is. I just hope we look back and say, hey, I'm glad we got the guy out of those top 3, because they're going to be probably, unless some major trade happens, it's going to go 1, 2, 3, perhaps. I just hope we get the one,
Yeah, I mean, but I think I said this maybe on another show when I was out at Combine, and I was on the show and they were asking questions. To your point a moment ago about no leaks, I'm like, hey, listen, probably 30 seconds into, I keep bringing this up because it was funny to me, but I was also very alarmed, like, oh my gosh. Adam Peters said, oh, I'm here to find another quarterback. And I was like, oh, man, you just told everybody, bye, Sam. Everybody go tell Sam goodbye when you get a chance. So he put that out there pretty quickly, like 30 seconds into his media availability. But then after that, it was like poker face.
Yeah.
Because there's options. There's for sure options. And you really don't know where it's going to go until, like, the Bears trading Justin Fields. And it was like,
yeah,
oh, man, okay, all right. So draft will be interesting. 6 picks in the top 100. I mean, Commanders fans got a lot to be excited about. And there was a lot of good talent in this year's draft, for sure.
And if Adam obviously learned under John Lynch quite a bit, and the 49ers were similar to the Rams in that they used draft picks as ways to maneuver through the draft. So I'm not 100% sold that having 6 picks in the top 100 that we're going to wind up with those 6 players. I think he is going to use those to try to negotiate some moves in the draft. And it's going to be to move up and down, but I don't think that we're going to end up with 6 players. I'd be surprised if he used every one of those picks on that, as opposed to some finagling there to move up and down the draft and get some players that they're targeting.
Definitely has crossed my mind. What kind of package could they pull together using picks and potentially a player? I'm not convinced they wouldn't trade somebody. I'm just not, but I mean, I could be wrong.
Okay.
I think they are exploring all options to get what they need to recalibrate. And when they said recalibrate, I was like, I think that was another moment where I clutched my pearls. I was like, "Oh Lord, here we go." And basically, they like, some of y'all gonna get up out of here sooner rather than later. And these guys don't want to lose. You know, they're not looking at this as like, okay, we're gonna rebuild, which means okay, we're gonna take a couple losing seasons now. These are not no. They want to be competitive and they want to win football games, because who in their right mind is really trying to lose?
Right.
Nobody. It is not. It's too brutal of a game to try to be going out there every day and run into a brick wall on every Sunday. Basically, that's what you're doing. But it'll be interesting. Draft night will be very interesting.
Yes, we will be tuned in, and to your point, this coaching staff and the types of players that they've brought in thus far, I don't think anyone is coming in to enter this season to look at this season as a throwaway season. I think these guys are coming in to compete, man. I think they're ready to go.
Yeah, they're coming in to compete for sure. It's not, they're not taking it. No, they're not wasting their time at all. I'm not saying they're going to those Super Bowls or nothing like that, but I don't think it'll be 4-13.
Absolutely. I'm with you.
Unless something like real dire happens, like people get hurt, but I don't.
Right. Absolutely. Well, man, Ken, you got anything else?
No, I just wanted to thank Candi for joining and remind people to reach out to her on Twitter. That's where the Knuckleheads have interacted with her. So I hope you reach out to her, follow her, and keep an ear out. When you're hearing some of these press conferences, listen for Candi. And give her a shout out on social media when you say, "Hey, that was a good question," or "Thanks for asking this," or maybe even throw a question her way. I know she's a professional and knows how to do it, but we all like ideas that come our way. So see what we can do. So Candi, again, thank you so much for joining our podcast today, and hopefully our paths will cross here again sooner than later, for sure.
Hopefully, when you all are, if you come up to a home game, definitely reach out. Would love to link up with you guys, meet you guys in person. And of course, next time maybe I'm in Dallas, because I do travel. If you guys are there, just let me know. I love to say hello.
Absolutely. And thank you again for all your time. And we absolutely were delighted and appreciate you taking the time with us.
Yeah, and knuckleheads out there, until next time, peace out, guys.
Peace out.